Adam smiled as the adventurers entered his base. If only they had stayed out, they would be fine. But no, they keep rushing and interrupting his business. The fools rushed into a room heavy with vines and foliage. A strange find in a dungeon, and one they didn't realize until the vines bound their legs. Their mistake didn't strike them until they saw the maw of leaves open up before them. Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide Jason. Today, I want to look at a classic monster. Something made for what we usually ignore and is mostly harmless. The plants. Imagine it. You're walking through a forest. The sun is shining and it is a pleasant day. Stopping for lunch, you lounge against a tree, the rough bark biting into your back. You lean forward slightly, find a more comfortable position, and lean back again. But you keep leaning back until you find yourself falling into a wooden pit. Then, while stunned with surprise, the wooden walls close in, trapping your torso inside while your legs flail about, unable to help. From there, death slowly takes you as the tree devours you. Plant monsters are a staple of fantasy. Even Tolkien used them, twice alone in Lord of the Rings. But are there any in mythology? Do you even need to ask? We have the vampiric tree of Japan, the Juboko. There is also the man-eating plant from Madagascar called Etavio. So yeah, they exist. Though most don't move, which is a distinction you'll find in more modern fantasy series. Both stationary plants with roots and those which can walk. So the big question is if these are even possible. Well, there is Dionaea muscipula, or better known as the Venus flytrap, a plant which lures in insects to land on its leaves. It is covered in trigger hairs on the inside of the leaves, which respond to touch and vibration to trigger the leaves to snap close. But it only does this once two are triggered, a failsafe to prevent closing too early or needlessly. It closes before the insect is dissolved, as it triggers additional hairs while struggling to escape. And this is not the only carnivorous plant. We got the water wheel plants, sundew plants, and the very important pitcher plants. The last one has a section which can hold fluids and an aromatic compound to lure in insects, and sometimes even larger animals like rodents and frogs before it digests them. Yeah, the truth is, plants are pretty vicious, just as bad as animals. So, to create a man-eating plant monster, we simply need to enlarge one of these species, right? Well, there are factors we need to look at. Where such plants would grow. And it is found in soil which is nitrogen and phosphorus poor. And this is where evolution and adaptation come in. Carnivorous plants usually grow in places where the soil is poor, usually bad for other species. Yet there could be other options. A symbolic relationship with another plant could occur. As of this time, I don't know any plants which have this sort of relationship, but it is theoretically possible. The problem then comes down to balancing the nutrients in the soil and how often it catches prey. A normal Venus flytrap catches about 5 to 7 insects a month. At a larger size, it would need more nutrients and more prey most likely. Now, if you use this for a fantasy setting, you could argue that these carnivorous plants feed on mana of their prey to sustain them. Okay, but what if we added another adaptation to our predatory plants? The ability to actively hunt rather than be heavily specialized ambushed predators. But plants don't walk, right? Well, they can bend, such as sunflowers chasing the sun by adjusting the water pressure inside them called turgor pressure. Another option involves having cells expand and contract. Lastly, plants, like animals, have hormones. But flat out walking? And I mean walking, not just rolling like a tumbleweed. Well, yes, first option is oat and wheat seeds. Not the domesticated ones. Humans have bred them not to move. But the wild seeds have what are called awns, which are stems which twist and bend as they dry, and this is used to move the seed and spread them out. Do you see the problem with this? Yeah, it is very limited and how far it can go, and they can only go for so long. But what about a real walking plant? I present to you the Socrate exoryza, a walking palm tree, and it can cover up to an insane 20 meters or 65 feet in a year. Okay, that isn't that far. But remember, this is a tree. And I sort of lied here. It doesn't actually walk. It came from an adaptation to right itself if it falls over. To walk, it will grow roots following the sun and soil nutrients. Due to soil erosion, the older roots are exposed and they will decay, all while the trunk is kept upright. In this manner, these trees do walk. So, could we use either of these to make our plant monsters walk? Individually, no. But by combining everything, it could theoretically be possible. Potentially, it might walk in early development, but later put down its roots. Yet, we still don't have the ability to see. It could taste and feel similar to a slime, or how there are plants which can fold up their petals and leaves to touch. Even the Venus flytrap can close up to protect themselves from fire, and that could work here. Create a heat sensory system to hunt with, mix in the touch responses, and we might be able to make this work. Plants also do have a rudimentary sense of smell, where they use pheromones to communicate, usually about predators. Sure, having eyes would work better, but there is enough that it is conceptually possible to make this work. Okay, let's be honest, we are talking about a major evolutionary change to plants. But these same adaptations have occurred in our world. They are what has happened to create animals, so it is possible. It just won't happen very quickly. But of course, this is designed for a fantasy setting, so we can make things work. Some carnivorous plants use a sticky substance to hold prey, and it could as well. Now, we do need to address what sort of material they are made from. If they are preying on humans, they would need to be much larger. Now, that means that these plants might want to be comprised more of a wood-like substance. It wouldn't need to be as tall, but the wooden surface would be more durable against foes. Remember, most carnivorous plants prey on insects, which are pretty weak. A common trope about plant monsters is that they have a form of toxin, so this could be used to paralyze their prey or as a defense system. Okay, so how would you prune back these plants? Generally, we have two options, the stationary and the mobile. The mobile is more like facing an animal, while the stationary are ambush predators. Basically, they are like spiders. The first thing to do is watch out for them. If you never get close, the stationary are harmless. But the mobile might rush you depending on what you do with the sensory organs. If we follow most carnivorous plants, they will choose grappling. So keeping your distance is key. If you want to get in close, you will need a weapon that can split plant tissue. If it is more like wood, an axe would do better than a sword. Depending on how it works, it might have a sticky substance or toxin. Wear armor that can be removed in a snap. I don't think it would really matter what kind. All seem to be about the same here. But what about magic? I'm sure you are thinking fire. But there is an issue. Many plants are actually fire resistant. Many trees have their bark and outer layers burn, but they can't survive if their core isn't damaged. This is how giant redwood trees can survive for centuries and withstand wildfires. While I do think fire would be effective, even at removing any adhesive. Still, you need to be sure that you are burning enough of it. Lightning would probably be resisted unless you use excessive force. Cold magic is a whole other story. You could easily damage it and even put it into hibernation, which would be a win. Yet there's a spell I want to talk about. Carnivorous plants still practice photosynthesis, and most plants go dormant at night. So could a spell of darkness do that as well? Maybe? It would probably take a couple of minutes before it would take effect. Still, it might work. I don't know if it would have any other kind of poison, so be ready for it. Having an antidote should be standard anyways for an adventurer. The worst case scenario is if it grabs you and pulls you into it. Focus on keeping your hands and arms free. If it swallows you, it will take time to dissolve and eat you. Use that time to cut and burrow yourself to freedom. You screwed up here and will die if you do nothing. So this is the time to be reckless. A high risk of death, but reward of living another day. Seize it. This is a strange fight. So long as you pay attention, you should be able to avoid the initial attack, which gives you a huge advantage. Elemental magic seems like the best option here, with a bow being the worst. I'm going to give them a 3 of 10 for difficulty, but could easily be higher or lower depending on the species. After slaying such a creature, there are a few rewards. The body could easily serve as firewood, but many alchemical ingredients come from plants, so I am sure that you would be able to sell the remains. But the real question should be is if you can work with it. This will depend on its level of intelligence, but it is a plant. Probably pretty low, most likely. Yet, they could easily be maneuvered to where you want them. Potentially, if you know your herbology, you could use them as defenses. But there would be problems. If you want to try this, good luck. The screams of the adventurers could be heard, and they would for a time. It was a shame. The plants were so slow, very ineffective at ending intruders, but they were so good at handling them. So it was worth it. The idea of man-eating plants is the multiplication of something mundane and everyday. You often walk by them and don't notice. That is the real danger of these monsters. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time for the Al Mirage. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.